as well. Nevertheless, these are fun games for them to play so that they can, when they do sometimes temporarily come to Earth and attempt to blend in by hiding in secret among you and seeing if you recognize any of them, then they are testing themselves and improving their ability to blend in that way. Not, again, for any kind of nefarious purpose, but just so that you can more smoothly get along with one another.
Are they telepathic with each other?
For the most part, yes.
So they would function more like you do when you encounter another member of your species. There's an acknowledgement of the existence of the other person, and then does there actually have a conversation happen where they're telepathically talking to each other?
Well, yes, but again, remember that with telepathy, the conversations are over in split seconds. It's not like a drawn-out conversation when you use words. This is why the Anunnaki were the first to actually locally transform your genetic material from Homo erectus to Homo sapien. But the idea to remember is that through the device called panspermia, genetic material was brought to Earth long, long ago on asteroids and comets. So in that sense, even the naturally evolved hominids on Earth are already containing some genetic material of other extraterrestrial species to begin with, as is all life on Earth, because it all comes from elsewhere and landed on Earth in these cometary and asteroidal impacts millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of years. It has to do with the idea of how much you need or don't need to break continuity. How much of the new person needs to contain or doesn't need to contain the idea of that experience being recreated over again in the present. Just depends on the person. But yes, it's possible. Just depends on the reasons for doing it.
It almost sounds to me like it's a shamanic training tool to be able to let go of past experience and to experience newness to a higher degree, and then to shift back and forth between that.
It can be, yes, because even the new experience that is experienced as if for the first time, once that's experienced, it will become part of the experience that you will use from that point forward. So you're still going to do that. You're still going to use your experiences in the way that you prefer to, even when you create something that feels absolutely new. You're still going to put it to work, so to speak, in the future by relating to it and referring to it in whatever way actually serves you.
When people incarnate into a new life experience, one of the purposes of that is to let go of past experience of something, of existence, I guess.
Well, yes and no, because again, remember that experience is actually happening in the present. The idea of reincarnation is an illusion. But you can create the experience of reincarnation by making connections from the present that you interpret as memories. You don't have to do that. And you can create what seems to be a clean slate to quote unquote start over. But all of these things happen from the present because everything exists all at once. So you're connecting to other simultaneous coexisting entities. You're not really coming from a past experience. You're not really going to a future experience. Everything is happening now.
I'm just going to get a little more clarity on that. So yes. The idea of having a life as yes. a human being.
Yes.
It comes with the collective agreement that the majority of any other experience, it's highly focused. So the majority yes. of experience that you're going to have is like from the first time, seeing yourself from a new perspective, experiencing yes. all of this for the first time.
Apparently, yes. That's the illusion that is created.
And the purpose of that is?
As you said, to discover yourself from a new point of view. To have that experience of wonderment, of discovery.
Hi, Bashar. Greetings from Croatia, Europe. I wanted to say that I'm very happy in these days of lockdown. And my question is what we can do more for this global ascension process. Thank you very much, and say hello to all your people.
Use the isolation in a monastic way, we have said, so that you can work on yourself and clear yourself out of belief systems that no longer work for you. So you can streamline yourself to go through the passage of the eye of the needle and come out the other side in a more accelerated way as more of your true self. That's one thing, because then you become more of a living example to others of what they can choose to by seeing in you the joy you experience by being more of yourself. At the same time, many of you are learning to use many of your technological devices, such as being used right now for communication over your internet. And you can use your imagination. You can expand your imagination. This kind of forces you, in a sense, to work your imagination in a more expanded way, to come up with ways to connect, come up with ways to do things that can help others in a variety of ways. So by sequestering yourself, you actually have to expand other parts of your imagination to reach out and make the connections you cannot necessarily make physically at this time. So use your imagination. Give it free rein. See what happens. Follow the formula. There are many, many things you can be doing, even from a position of physical sequestering, that you may not necessarily have thought of before because you didn't have to. So now that you have created a situation where it seems like you have to, you can give more free rein to investigating yourself, finding out who you really are, and by finding out more of who you really are, being inspired to do things that you may never have thought of before because you weren't the you are now in this circumstance.
Can you comment on the idea of what the collective is doing at this particular time in terms of how the lockdown has affected us, and then how that can then be applied to the lockdown experience for the individual?
Well, we have addressed this already to some degree, and even just moments ago. It's an opportunity to go within. It's an opportunity to have more self-investigation about what you do and don't prefer, what belief systems you prefer to hold on to, which ones you prefer to let go of. It's about snapping the chains of the anchors to the past. It's about streamlining yourself so you can go through the passage in this transitional time more effortlessly, more accelerated, and come out the other side in a more positive way that can create, with a more expanded imagination, more things that are more representative, putting out into the world, so to speak, more things that are more representative of the version of Earth that you prefer. It's a time of inner creativity that can be stored up like the idea of potential energy, so that when it comes time to go back out into the world, it can become kinetic energy in a variety of new ideas and new expressions and new activities, new ways, new actions that you may not have otherwise thought to do, because now you have built up this library, this reservoir in your imagination of, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. By being more of yourself, more of these inspirations come to you. You use what is at hand in a different way than you ever did before, like you're using your internet technology now in ways that most people didn't necessarily think they could. You are refining it, you are perfecting it. It is creating more of a telepathic connection and communication in your communities. And when you come out the other side, you will find that you can function in a much more expanded, more creative way as more of yourself. So it's really up to you to customize these things for yourself by taking advantage of what's going on in the sequestering now, to dig down more deeply within yourself, find out who you really are and who you really are not, and let those attributes come out in a more creative and expressive and imaginative way.
Hello, my name is Rob. I am from Edmonton, Canada. My question for Bashar is, how can one best discern when you get conflicting information from two or more channels that you trust? Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you very much. See ya.
As we said, there will always be interpretations. There will always be ways of saying things that are for different belief systems. It's up to you to decide what to use and what to leave behind. You can decide what works for you. You can decide what doesn't. It doesn't mean necessarily that information coming that doesn't align with you is wrong. It's simply not necessarily correct for you. in the way it's being transmitted. It may be being interpreted in a certain way. Terminologies may be different. They may sometimes be saying the same thing in different ways because of the different belief systems on your planet that need to hear them in different ways. But if the way something is being said simply doesn't resonate with you, then simply find what does resonate with you. That's the only thing that matters at that moment. You can trust them both to deliver information that both does and doesn't resonate with you, and you can trust that the whole idea of that is for you to actually develop better discernment about what does and doesn't resonate with you, and take and use what does and leave what doesn't behind. This is a process of training to know what is you and what is not. So sometimes information may even be deliberately delivered that doesn't resonate with you, to see if you're willing to know that it doesn't and recognize that it doesn't, so that you don't succumb to what somebody is saying just because they're saying it. So you can trust that it is being done for your benefit, even if it is information that doesn't actually resonate with you. It's still up to you to decide how to use that information or not use that information according to what you believe is true for you, and that's the whole point.
Again, with that particular question, so since you have said that the virus was a natural virus, that
I am not saying that it has not been in some ways manipulated by humanity, but it began as a natural virus. And that is what we are focusing on, so that you can understand why it wound up the way it wound up. Even if someone has been manipulating it, it started to be manipulated because of its tendency to cross barriers through the destruction of the natural environments on your planet. We are giving you an overview and a simplified version of this idea, and not going into the details that would, in your society, make a lot of people begin to focus a little bit too much on the conspiracy theory aspect of these things. So let us just leave it as the idea that, yes, to some degree, the viral components have been manipulated a bit, but it all begins with the natural idea that when you destroy ecosystems on your planet, these viruses will make themselves available to be utilized in negative ways from a variety of fear-based belief systems. And that's all we're going to say about that at this time.
Okay. Yeah, because basically what you're saying is you miss the point if you focus on the conspiracy theory of this is another government trying to do something to you or whatever. That
even if it's accidental, you're still missing the point, because it has to begin with taking responsibility for why the world is out of balance and why these things occur. So even if one of the end results is that somebody decides from their own fear-based beliefs to take a natural virus and manipulate it and engineer it into something else, it still begins with the major point that this only happened because of the destruction and the imbalance that exists on your planet through fear-based beliefs. And that's the point to focus on. Not what became of it in its variety of expressions and forms, but why it became that way in its variety of expressions and forms. That's the point that we choose to focus on, and therefore we will not go too deeply into the idea of the so-called side effects that may be the result of people's fear-based beliefs and actions and manipulations, but the focal point of why you're out of balance to begin with.
This is the most important. It's a question about forgiveness of others and demonstrating unconditional love.
Yes.
The others are a number of close and previously trusted family members and also close friends who've not been happy for myself and or my partner about us or our life choices, perhaps jealousy to some degree.
All right, but please begin with your important question. We'll get to the others in a moment.
Okay, well, my question is that about them and how we achieve total forgiveness, that is unconditional love, for these particular people.
All right. And are you familiar with what we have recently delivered as a 5-step process for going through the eye of the needle that includes the first step being forgiveness?
Yes, I know how important it is that we must forgive them.
All right.
And unconditionally love them. But
well, do you understand that if you maintain a connection to things like the idea of self-incrimination or that which has in your mind trespassed, as you say, against you, do you understand that you anchor yourself to that reality?
Yes.
Well, if you understand that, then why would you want to continue to anchor yourself to a reality you say you no longer prefer? Forgiveness is literally the cutting of the chain that anchors you to a past that you say you no longer prefer. It's letting go of anything that you believe you need in order for you to move forward, so that you understand that regardless of what anyone else may have done, the idea is that you realize that you no longer prefer to connect yourself to those ideas and maintain the vibrations that are lower than you prefer to maintain, and are really willing to be free to create the reality that you prefer by snapping those chains, by cutting those ties, by forgiving and letting go and realizing that they have their own path and that it's none of your business what they choose to do with it, so that you can be free to walk your own path by not anchoring yourself to those realities, those vibrations, those frequencies, those actions that they may or may not have done in physical reality, or what you may have imagined that they have done that you see as vibrationally incompatible with you and your preferences. But as long as you anchor yourself to them, you are still choosing them.
Yes. And I think that's where my question lies, is how to deal with that. Like, if it was a past event, I can see how you can accept it's previously happened and now it's time to, move on from that. It doesn't serve you anymore. But some of the behavior that we're experiencing from these people it's not just ongoing, but it has an effect on other relationships, in particular children. And so it's like an ongoing feeling of being...
All right, but remember that feelings are the result of what you believe to be true.
Yeah.
And what is it you are teaching your children in terms of how to respond to these things?
Yeah, well, the children are in effect not wanting contact because of what they're being told about.
Then maybe they are telling you something that you need to also pay attention to. Why are you maintaining a contact with something that you say you are no longer vibrationally compatible with?
Yeah.
So if you can answer that question for yourself, you will realize that perhaps whatever it is you have shared with them about your particular reality, your particular belief systems that you prefer, is not necessarily something that they may choose. And if they don't, then it's none of your business. Move on. Sure. If you get to a point where you realize that no change is forthcoming, that they're not going to make a choice to vibrationally align with you, why would you perpetuate contact with something that is not representative of the reality you prefer? That's number one. Number two is, again, if you are going to at least allow them the opportunity to consider that they might even change, you have to show them through your actions the consequences of their choices. Otherwise, you're not even actually giving them an opportunity to say, oh, she is removing herself from our reality, and therefore, if we actually do prefer to continue to have some kind of relationship with her, we're the ones that are going to have to change because she's showing us the consequences of the choices that we're making that are not compatible with what she prefers. So if you don't actually move away, you're not even giving them an opportunity to decide whether or not to change. You're only perpetuating the ideas that you find vibrationally incompatible by staying around and reinforcing that it's okay for them to keep acting the way they're acting toward you because you're willing to accept it.
Yeah.
So you have to take responsibility for your part in the creation of the perpetuation of the vibration you say you don't prefer. And that's why forgiveness is not only about forgiving them, but also forgiving yourself. That's part two, remember?
Yes. And those that are influencing the children and other family members and other friends.
But as I said, no one is influenced unless they choose to be.
Yeah, sure.
If you really understand you are in your own reality, then the only way you can experience what you call an influence is to accept that what is being said about you is true. And then you influence yourself by matching the frequencies you're being offered that you say you don't prefer. And that's why we asked you, what are you teaching the children? Because if the children themselves recognize that they don't have to choose to experience influence from something vibrationally incompatible, then they may be showing you the way to allow yourself to recognize that you cannot be influenced by anything you don't agree with. And if other people are choosing to create agreement with something they find vibrationally incompatible, choosing to create what appears to be influence by others, again, all you can do is let them know there are other choices they could make, but only to a point where you yourself are not anchoring yourself to those realities and then allowing your vibration to diminish so that you also feel influenced when you don't have to.
Yes, thank you.
You really have to let go of things that are no longer relevant for you.
Yes, and yeah, it's that recognizing that it just doesn't serve us at all to feel.
And that's, in essence, forgiveness.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to let them have their path while you don't deny yourself your own path. You have to be true to everyone, not by being responsible for them, but by being responsible to them to be yourself, regardless of anything they may have ever done. You have to let it go. Otherwise, you are simply remaining where you say you don't wish to live.
Yeah.
Does that help?
It does. It does. And on that theme of forgiveness on the wider level, we know that there is the extreme damage to our ecosystems and our planet, with a significant contribution to that from animal agriculture and the inhumane conditions in which animals have been kept. Including
and therefore, what would you like to do about it? Again, forgiveness doesn't mean you can't do something about it, because if you're going to transition yourself to a reality that you prefer, you still have to take the actions that you would be taking in that reality.
Yeah.
That are representative of the reality you prefer. So how are you transforming your preferences into actual representative actions that are more reflective of the reality you prefer? What actions are you taking in that direction would be the answer.
Yeah, well, we are ethical vegans, so we are choosing not to take part in that treatment of the
That's
animals.
one step.
Yeah, but
what else could you be doing?
Well, we need to be forgiving those that are involved.
But can you also be educating? Can you also share information that demonstrates the idea that this may not necessarily be the kind of choices that you or others may wish to make? If you give them alternatives, they may choose those alternatives. Again, you can't force them to. And remember that that's not necessarily the world you live in just because you can see it.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes, I do.
But give them an option and they may take it. If they don't take it, fine. It's none of your business whether they do or not. But if you give them an option, if you give them information, if you give them education that there are alternatives and how beneficial those alternatives might be for them, then at least you are doing the most you can do to give them the option to change, the option to align with your particular perspective. But that's all you can do. But you have to take some actions if you wish to give other people a chance to change.
Yes. Yes, and we do certainly try to educate and use skills to assist people who are activists who need assistance.
All right, then you are doing what you can.
Yeah, and in the idea of forgiveness, in the theme of forgiveness, those people who are educated or do have the information and choose still to continue for profit or because it's easier to do so,
then that is representative of a reality you don't live in. Just because you can see it doesn't mean you're in it.
Yeah.
You have to understand it's like there's a glass wall between you and that reality. You can still see through the wall. They can see you, but nothing can get to you through that wall. Sure. Just keep living in the way you prefer to be living and being a living example of choices others could make should they decide to do so. Remember, you never change the world you're on. You change yourself and you shift to another already existing version of Earth that is already more reflective, bit by bit, more and more every day, of the version of Earth that you prefer to experience. But you never change the world you were on. That world will continue on its own and may be a very destructive world. But you will no longer live in it. In the years to come, you will no longer perceive it. It will look like the world you are on has changed, but it never does. You change and go to another world that already exists, that's already more reflective of the world you prefer to be on.
Oh, that's amazing. That's brilliant.
That's how it works. Because everything exists at the same time. Therefore, it's only separated by frequency. This is one of the things that we are talking about in this particular transmissions monologue. More specifically, is the whole idea of how to more effectively and more consciously navigate different parallel versions of reality so that you can more consciously navigate through those versions and experience more of the kind of alternate universal realities that you prefer.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else?
The final question I've got is a slightly different topic.
Yeah.
As soon as we were discussing this transmission between myself and my partner, our cat has showed immediate interest. Yes. And he has been acting as our guide in higher energy since we made big life changes and have been following our highest excitement. He's been a really big part of it.
Well, cats can see many things that humans often cannot.
Yeah, and we were wondering to what extent we may be likely to find evidence that he is an ET slipping out in and out of different dimensions and realities. Because we've been dreaming about him as a different being.
All cats are extra dimensionals. All cats are extra dimensionals. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have a physical component that remains on your planet. No. But all cats have the capacity to go through a revolving door in their consciousness that allows them to tap into extra dimensional sources of energy and information. And that's why their senses can perceive things that most humans cannot. So in that context, all cats are extra dimensional beings, a part of which is represented by the animal you perceive physically in your reality.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Now, all beings are that way. What we're saying is cats are more aware of the fact that they're that way and therefore exhibit more of the traits of being extra dimensional beings that simultaneously coexist in many different realities, just as you do, but you're becoming aware of that, whereas cats have always been aware of that. That's their nature, that's their purpose, that's their reflection in your reality, is that everyone is extra dimensional constantly. It's just that they're helping you become more aware of that, to tap into that more concretely, more consciously, with more awareness and more action. Yes?
Yes. Well, right. He's been playing a part a lot in our dreams during the pandemic. So we normally travel with him. And we've been stationary with him. And he's really been a big part of our dreams, including belonging to other people with a different name. And being a totally different being. He's been a big, fluffy, sort of wildly excited dog in one of our dreams. Yes. But it was really him each time in the dream. So
the consciousness of the cat will be what it ever needs to be to assist you, to reflect to you what you need to know. So in that sense, cats are, to some degree on that level, what you might refer to as shapeshifters.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much.
We thank you for the co-creation of this interaction, our unconditional love to you.
Thank you.